Welcome to Echoes of Crime. Today we're opening a file from Argentina. It's a case that really shook the country, not just because of the horrific crime itself, but because of how it potentially played out.
Exactly. We're talking about three young women, Brenda Castillo, Morena Verdi, and Lara Gutierrez, who was only 15. They disappeared on their way to what they thought was a party.
And what happened next is just unimaginable. They were kidnapped, subjected to, extreme trauma, and then executed.
But the detail that really caught national and even international attention, sparking massive protests, was this chilling allegation that the torture, the killings, might have been broadcast live, streamed to a private social media group.
45 people, allegedly watching this unfold in real time. It's almost impossible to process.
It really is. And it immediately throws up these deeply unsettling questions. Was this just, a brutal act of revenge, maybe over stolen drugs, as the investigation suggests?
Or is it something more calculated?
Yeah.
A terrifying public message, a kind of narco-justice performance designed to broadcast power through pure sadism.
That's what we want to explore in this deep dive. We're going to synthesize the official records, the investigation results around these deaths, the case often called the Florencio Varela triple femicide.
And it's more than just recounting events. This case really ripped the lid off the vulnerabilities in communities around Buenos Aires, and it exposed the reach of these Peruvian-linked crime groups operating inside Argentina.
So our mission here is to go beyond just the timeline. We want you to understand the context, the environment, the people involved, and the shocking consequences of this crime.
Okay, let's start by grounding this. Where did this happen? The story begins in La Matanza, part of Greater Buenos Aires.
Right. And La Matanza isn't just a suburb. The sources we have describe it as a region grappling with really profound issues, severe poverty, and what the local authorities actually call high marginality.
High marginality. What does that mean in practical terms?
Well, it means basic state services, things like reliable policing, healthcare, education, good job opportunities. They're either stretched incredibly thin or just absent altogether.
So people are left vulnerable.
Extremely. La Matanza consistently ranks low on human development indices for the area. We're talking about nearly half the population living below the poverty line, according to official figures around that time.
And that kind of intense socioeconomic pressure, that vacuum, it creates an opening, doesn't it, for other structures to take hold?
Precisely. Narco gangs thrive in these environments. They offer illicit ways to make money, illicit forms of order, even when the legitimate paths are blocked. But that comes with immense risk, obviously.
Let's bring it back to the victims. Tell us about them.
Okay. Brenda del Castillo was 20. She was a young mother. She had a 1-year-old child. She lived with her own mother and younger siblings.
Trying to make ends meet, it sounds like.
Very much so. She worked selling clothes online through Facebook and also had a job at a 24-hour kiosk in a place called Ciudad de Vita. She was cousins with Morena.
And Morena Verdi?
Morena was 21. She lived with her aunt, also Brenda's cousins, so they were close family.
And the youngest, Lara?
Lara Gutierrez, just 15. She lived with her grandmother. Interestingly, reports mention she regularly attended a local evangelical church, which maybe suggests, some structure or support system despite the difficult surroundings.
So these three were tightly connected family friends living in this same challenging environment.
Yes, and this is where things get complicated and, frankly, quite controversial in terms of the narrative that emerged early on.
How so?
Well, some initial investigation leads, which were picked up by the media, suggested that because of their economic hardship, the young women might have been involved in. The official reports use this phrase, certain dangerous activities with great economic benefit.
Which could mean a lot of things, but the implication was?
The implication, unfortunately, often leaned towards links to the drug trade itself, maybe small-scale dealing, or even potentially sex work. Activities seen as high risk, but potentially high reward in that context.
And that framing caused a backlash.
Significant one. Feminist movements and other civil society groups reacted very strongly. They publicly criticized the media coverage, arguing it was creating a stigma around the victims.
Their point being?
Their point was that the focus seemed to shift towards questioning the victims' choices, maybe implying they brought this on themselves by being involved in risky activities, rather than focusing squarely on the horrific violence they endured.
And the systemic failures that allowed it to happen.
Exactly. The demand was to call it what it was, femicide, targeted gender-based violence and not try to explain it away or somehow justify it by scrutinizing the victims' lives or alleged associations.
It highlights that double vulnerability, doesn't it? The structural poverty of La Matanza and then the specific gender danger they faced. It seems they were likely known to these criminal elements.
Which, tragically, might be why they were targeted in such a calculated way that night.
Let's move to that night, Friday, September 19th, 2025. What do we know about their plans?
They intended to go to a party. Relatives later described it vaguely as a mysterious party, which already sounds a bit ominous in retrospect.
And how are they planning to get there?
Initially, they did the smart thing. They tried to book a rideshare, like an Uber or Cabify, a traceable, relatively safe option.
But they didn't take it.
No. That booking was canceled. They were apparently told that someone, maybe someone they knew or were led to trust, was coming to pick them up instead.
And that decision. That was the fatal one.
It seems so. That was the moment the trap was set. The pickup happened around 9:29 p.m. at a well-known spot, the La Tablada roundabout.
Is there evidence of this?
Yes. Crucially, there's surveillance video. It captures the three of them getting into a white Chevrolet Tracker.
A specific vehicle.
Very specific. And investigators quickly found something important about it. The license plate was fake.
So not just a random car. This suggests planning.
Absolutely. Premeditation. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. Someone acquired that vehicle, put a fake plate on it, specifically for this purpose.
And then there's the digital trail, Morena's Instagram post.
Right. This is perhaps the last glimpse into their final hours. Around 11:00 p.m., roughly an hour and a half after they got into the tracker, Morena posted a photo to her Instagram story from inside the car.
What did the photo show?
On the surface, just two keychains, a Baby Yoda one, which was Morena's, and a Luigi one belonging to Lara. Simple, personal items.
But there was more to it.
Yes. Forensic examination of the image, cross-referenced with statements from people who knew them, revealed something significant. Attached to both keychains was a small cuticle cutter.
A cuticle cutter. Why is that important?
According to a witness statement in the investigation files, these specific cutters were sometimes used by people in their circle for consuming a particular drug.
What drug?
A synthetic drug known locally as 2C, sometimes called pink cocaine, although chemically it's different. It's 2CB, a hallucinogen.
Okay, so 2C, that's become quite prevalent in some narco markets in Latin America, hasn't it?
It has. So seeing the cutters potentially linked to 2C use in that last photo, it's circumstantial, of course, but it does strengthen the potential connection between the victims and the drug scene. Not necessarily as major players, maybe just users or very low-level distributors caught up in it.
It potentially reinforces the motive the investigators landed on the stolen drug stash.
It certainly adds a layer to that possibility. That photo, around 11 p.m., is the last concrete sign of life. Morena's phone had its last connection about 3 hours later, maybe around 2 a.m. Saturday morning.
And by Saturday afternoon, when the families couldn't reach any of them, the phones were dead.
That's when the panic really set in. They reported the disappearances immediately. The search began.
How did investigators find them? It wasn't back in La Matanza.
No. They used cell phone signal tracking. It wasn't precise initially, but it gave them a geographic area to focus on, which led them about 30 kilometers away to a different district entirely. Florencio Varela.
And that's where the house was.
Yes. After 5 incredibly long days for the families, on September 24th, police raided a specific house in Florencio Varela. The grim discovery was made in the backyard. The party was a lethal ambush.
Let's talk about that crime scene. The house in Florencio Varela in Villa Vattione. What did the police find?
When they entered the property, located at the corner of Rio Jajal and Chañar streets, the first major discovery was in the backyard. The bodies of Brenda, Morena, and Lara were found partially buried.
Partially buried.
Yes, in what the official reports call a fossa, basically a shallow pit or grave. Some were wrapped in garbage bags, and the pit was covered over with rubble and debris, a hasty attempt at concealment.
Were there signs of trying to clean up inside the house, too?
Definitely. As police secured the scene, they actually found 2 people inside the house actively trying to clean, using bleach, other strong cleaning products.
Clean what?
Subsequent forensic tests confirmed they were trying to scrub away bloodstains. So, a very conscious, very recent effort to destroy evidence just before the police arrived.
And the car. The white Chevrolet Tracker.
They found it nearby, only about 300 feet, maybe 100 meters from the house. It had been deliberately set on fire.
Burned out.
Completely. This is a classic tactic used by organized crime groups to destroy evidence. Fire obliterates fingerprints, hair fibers, DNA, almost everything. It shows a degree of sophistication, of knowing how to sanitize a crime scene.
What did the medical examiner determine about the time of death?
The autopsies estimated the time of death occurred sometime between 3 a.m. and 5 a.m. on the Saturday morning after they disappeared.
So that suggests they were held for several hours, from the Instagram post around 11 p.m. Friday.
Exactly. Potentially 4 to 6 hours. Held and likely tortured during that period.
The forensic reports, the first prosecutor, Gaston Duplat, used some strong language, extreme brutality, inhumane suffering.
He did. The findings were horrific. It wasn't just about killing them. It was about inflicting maximum pain and degradation. This wasn't a quick, clean hit. It was personal, and it felt like it was meant to send a message.
Can you share some of the specific findings? I know it's difficult, but it's important to understand the nature of the violence.
It is. The reports are graphic. Lara Gutierrez, the 15-year-old, had all 5 fingers on her left hand amputated, chopped off.
That's often symbolic in cartel violence, isn't it? Linked to theft.
It is often interpreted that way, yes. A specific brutal message about stealing or betrayal. Brenda del Castillo suffered severe internal injuries. Her stomach was slit open, and she had significant blunt force trauma to her skull. Morena Verdi was believed to have been asphyxiated, possibly with a plastic bag.
Were there other injuries?
Yes. The reports also documented things like cigarette butts, extensive bruising consistent with facial crushing, and multiple knife wounds. Some of these injuries may have been inflicted while they were still alive.
The level of cruelty is staggering. It really does point away from just simple murder and towards something performative, something meant to instill terror.
Absolutely. The intensity, the specific nature of the injuries. It feels like a deliberate process of dehumanization. Inflicting suffering as a form of communication to anyone who might hear about it, rivals, associates, the community.
Which brings us squarely to the motive. The official investigation concluded it was about drugs.
That's the primary line pursued by the prosecution, yes. Revenge for the theft of a cocaine stash belonging to a local drug trafficking gang.
And this wasn't just some small local crew.
No. Investigators quickly linked this group to a much larger, established Peruvian criminal organization, one known to operate out of Villa 1114, a notorious shanty town in the Bajo Flores area of Buenos Aires City.
So we're talking transnational organized crime.
Correct, which immediately raises the stakes. It involves established drug routes, command structures, and likely more resources than a purely local gang.
And the alleged mastermind, the one who ordered this.
The main target identified by investigators is a 23-year-old Peruvian national. He goes by the alias Julito, or Little J. His real name is Tony Jansen Valverde Victoriano. He allegedly orchestrated the whole thing, setting up the party as a lure.
A 23-year-old ordering this kind of brutality.
It's chilling, and what's perhaps even more striking, according to reports citing Interpol data, is that Little J apparently had no prior criminal record. Not in Argentina, not in Peru.
Really? So he came out of nowhere, essentially.
It suggests perhaps a new generation of leadership within these organizations, young, ruthless, and maybe flying under the radar of traditional law enforcement until they commit an act this extreme.
Okay, now let's get to the most controversial element. The alleged live stream. This was a huge part of the initial reporting.
It was. The Buenos Aires security minister, Javier Alonso, made a very public, very definitive statement about it. He claimed the victims weren't just tortured and killed, but that it happened live, streamed on a private Instagram group.
And he said there were viewers.
He claimed around 45 people watched it live. He described it as a deliberate act of disciplining. He even alleged the gang leader, presumably Little J, addressed the viewers directly, saying something like, "This is what happens to anyone who steals drugs from me."
Wow. And the governor, Kiselyov, picked up on this too.
Yes, Governor Kiselyov explicitly referred to the crime as a narco-femicide, emphasizing both the drug motive and the gendered nature of the killing, and referencing the alleged broadcast aspect as part of its horrific nature.
So the political narrative was set. A public execution via social media.
That was the narrative pushed strongly by officials, but this is where the investigation hits a significant snag, legally speaking.
What's the issue?
The current prosecutor handling the case, Adriana Ribas, has been much more cautious. He stated publicly that the alleged live transmission, the actual video, has not been proven to exist in the case file.
So they don't have the video?
According to Ribas, no. The claim about the live stream seems to be based primarily on spontaneous statements made by some of the initial detainees during questioning. Things people said, possibly under duress or without legal counsel present yet.
So no material proof of the broadcast itself has been secured.
Not according to the prosecutor overseeing the formal judicial investigation. This is a critical distinction. The public and political outrage was significantly fueled by the idea of this live-streamed spectacle.
If they can't prove this strain happened, it doesn't change the fact of the murders, obviously, but it changes the nature of the charge, perhaps, and the understanding of the gang's strategy.
Exactly. It impacts how you argue premeditation and the specific intent behind the extreme cruelty. If the stream existed, it's clear evidence of using social media as a tool for terror and control, broadcasting authority. Without it, the prosecution relies more heavily on the forensic evidence and the logistics of the crime to demonstrate that intent.
It also highlights the gap that can exist between political statements made in the heat of a crisis and the slower, more rigorous process of judicial proof.
A very important gap. The fact that high-level officials immediately ran with the narco-femicide label and the live stream detail shows how potent that narrative was for demanding federal resources and attention. But the courts require verifiable evidence.
Let's talk about the arrests. Who was taken into custody?
Things moved very fast right after the bodies were found. The first wave of arrests included 4 people found at the house or directly linked to it.
One's cleaning up.
Potentially, yes, or connected to the property owner. They were Miguel Angel Villanueva Silva, who is Peruvian, age 27, Daniela Ibarra, 19, Andres Maximiliano Parra, 18, and Magali Celeste Gonzalez Guerrero, 28. All were charged initially with aggravated homicide.
But the investigation went deeper, looking at the logistics.
Right. They focused on tracking down everyone involved in the abduction, transport, and concealment. A key piece was identifying that second vehicle, the VW Fox, seen on camera acting as a support car for the Chevrolet Tracker.
And they found the driver.
Yes. The owner and driver was identified as Victor Sotocuro Lazaro. He holds dual Peruvian and Argentinian nationality. He didn't stick around.
He fled.
He did. He headed towards Bolivia, taking a tourist bus. He was apprehended near the border town of Villazon, a clear attempt to get out of Argentina.
Yes, his explanation.
His lawyer claims he fled because he received death threats after his name and picture were linked to the case publicly. Sotocuro himself gave a statement admitting he was at the house that night.
What did he admit to?
He said he transported 2 young men away from the house during the critical time window between roughly 1:30 a.m. and 5 a.m. Saturday, when the murders are thought to have occurred. He noted these men were wearing face masks and had plastic coverings on their shoes, suggesting they were trying not to leave forensic traces.
But he claims he wasn't involved in the murders themselves.
That seems to be his position, but he can't account for his whereabouts during that entire critical time frame. And there's physical evidence potentially linking him more directly.
Like what?
When he was arrested, investigators noted injuries on his hands, consistent perhaps with a struggle.
So they took forensic samples.
Yes, specifically they requested a subungual swab. That means taking samples from underneath his fingernails. They're looking for the victim's DNA. If found, it would strongly suggest direct physical contact.
And his niece was also arrested.
Yes, Florencia Ibanez, who is 30. She admitted she was actually in the VW Fox with her uncle, Sotocuro Lazaro, earlier that night.
What did she say happened?
She claimed they drove from Bajo Flores towards Varela around 9 p.m. for what she thought was just a passenger pickup. But crucially, she says her uncle dropped her off back in Bajo Flores shortly before 1 a.m., specifically 12:48 a.m. according to her statement, and then took the car back towards Varela alone.
So her statement tries to give him an alibi for part of the night, but confirms he was involved in the movements.
Exactly. It attempts to narrow the window where he was potentially involved in the worst part, but it still places him firmly within the logistical operation. She was arrested likely for her knowledge and presence in the vehicle used.
What about burying the bodies? Was anyone arrested for that?
Yes. Police arrested a 29-year-old man named Ariel Jimenez. He's accused of being hired specifically to dig the grave, the fossa, and bury the bodies.
His charge is different then.
Yes, his charge is encubrimiento agravado, aggravated cover-up, or concealment. The aggravated part reflects the extreme severity of the underlying crime he was allegedly helping to conceal.
Did he cooperate?
No, he exercised his constitutional right to remain silent when questioned. Investigators also noted that he apparently threw away his cell phone around the time the case blew up publicly, suggesting an attempt to destroy potential digital evidence linking him.
So, several arrests related to the execution and cover-up, but the alleged leaders?
Still at large. The primary targets are Pequeño J, Tony Jansen Valverde Victoriano, and his alleged second-in-command, Matias Agustin Osorio. Interpol red notices, essentially international arrest warrants, have been issued for both. Osorio is believed by prosecutors to have been physically present during the killings.
And Minister Alonso mentioned even more fugitives.
Yes, the security minister claimed there were potentially 4 other fugitives besides Little J and Osorio, making a total of 6 people on the run connected to the core crime. It suggests a wider network was involved in planning, execution, and escape.
The impact of this crime on the families and on society, it must have been immense.
Absolutely. It ignited national grief and outrage. The feminist slogan, Ni una menos, not one less, was prominent in protests demanding justice. But interestingly, within the victims' families, there wasn't a unified response towards the justice system itself.
How so?
Well, you had Brenda's mother, understandably consumed by grief, making a very clear demand for justice from the state. She wanted them all caught and punished. She said, "They tore my daughter away from me," a plea for the system to work.
But Brenda's father had a different view.
A starkly different view. Lionel del Castillo, Brenda's father, voiced profound distrust of the police and the judicial process. He specifically doubted their commitment or ability to actually catch Pequeño J.
He thought it might be a cover-up.
He used that exact phrase, encubrimiento barbaro, a barbaric cover-up. He feared they'd just arrest some lower-level figures, maybe a fall guy, and declare the case solved without getting the real mastermind.
Why was he so skeptical?
He spoke very openly about his own past. He admitted he used to be involved in the criminal underworld himself before turning his life around years earlier. He said, "I come from the same world," and because of that, he felt he understood how these things really worked.
So he felt the official investigation wouldn't get to the truth.
Right, and chillingly, he vowed to find the perpetrators himself. He said things like, "I know who I'm playing with, and I don't fear these creatures." It's a powerful statement of no confidence in the state's ability to deliver justice in this specific context.
That's a really strong contrast to Lara's mother, Estela.
Yes. Estela, Lara's mother, expressed the opposite sentiment publicly. She stated she had confidence in the judicial process, believed the investigators were doing their job, and trusted they would eventually catch everyone responsible.
That split is telling, isn't it? Deep cynicism born from experience versus faith in the institutions.
It really highlights the fracture that can occur in communities heavily impacted by organized crime. Trust in the state's ability to protect and provide justice becomes eroded for some, while others still cling to that hope.
And politically, this became a major flashpoint.
Immediately, Governor Kicillof of Buenos Aires province framed it very deliberately as a narco-femicidio. That term itself combines the drug motive with the gendered killing, emphasizing the systemic nature of the threat. He described it as premeditated, planned, and with an attempt to conceal the bodies.
And he used it to call for action from the national government.
Yes, he made a very public demand for President Milei to convene an urgent meeting, a national table involving all provincial governors.
His argument being
that drug trafficking isn't a local problem you can solve province by province. It's fundamentally international, crossing borders, exploiting weaknesses everywhere. He argued it requires a coordinated national strategy involving federal resources and intelligence sharing.
Did he criticize the national government's approach?
He did. He specifically accused the central government of, in his words, defunding the security forces needed to combat these sophisticated transnational criminal organizations. He was essentially saying, we need federal help, and you're cutting resources.
So the case became a focal point for debates about security policy and federal versus provincial responsibilities.
Absolutely. It starkly highlighted the presence and power of these Peruvian-linked criminal groups, how they exploit vulnerable areas like La Matanza, and how easily they seem to operate across borders. The call for a unified national response became the dominant political theme emerging from this tragedy.
So looking back at this deep dive, the Florencio Varela triple femicide, it's just a brutal illustration of modern organized crime, isn't it?
It really is. What starts as alleged revenge over stolen drugs escalates into this horrifying spectacle of violence. And the allegation of it being broadcast, whether proven or not, points to this desire to use violence not just to punish, but to dominate, to communicate absolute authority.
It reveals the chilling efficiency and ruthlessness of these narco structures operating, essentially, in the state's shadow in places like Buenos Aires.
And this case, it's so much more than just the awful timeline of how 3 young women lost their lives. It really holds up a mirror to these lethal intersections we've talked about.
Extreme poverty, gender-based violence, femicide, and the cold systemic power of drug cartels that feed on that desperation.
Right. When you look at the details, the fake license plate, the burned car, the specific symbolic torture methods, the alleged message during the supposed live stream, it feels so strategic. The violence against Brenda, Morena, and Lara wasn't just random cruelty, it was communication. Horrific, but calculated communication.
Which leaves us, and you, the listener, with a pretty heavy question, I think.
It does. When you see criminal violence used not just for profit, not just for revenge, but seemingly designed to broadcast power, maybe even to an audience, does seeking justice for these three young women also demand something more?
Like a national reckoning with the deeper issues.
Exactly. A reckoning with the structural problems, the poverty, the lack of opportunity, the breakdown of trust in institutions that create the environment where these criminal groups can gain such terrifying power in the first place.
What really needs to change, structurally, in society, in law enforcement, to make sure vulnerable young people aren't trapped, to ensure that an invitation to a party doesn't become a death sentence?
That's the question this case forces us all to confront.